In the food industry, sensory programs are vital for developing appealing products, ensuring quality, and understanding consumer preferences, ultimately driving demand and product success. Consumer acceptability of food is a major target for food businesses. The more a food product becomes acceptable to the consumer, the more opportunities for increasing demand and market success are realized. Although many factors affect the customer's decision to eat a particular food, the human senses are the most dominant determinant. Food that doesn't smell good, even though it has a pleasant color or an attractive appearance, will lead customers to refrain from buying it. In the same way, a product may smell good, but look unappealing, leading to losing the customer before they even try it. Sensory evaluation is a scientific discipline used to evoke, measure, analyze, and interpret reaction to those characteristics of food material as they are perceived by the senses of sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. So, sensory evaluation is a crucial tool in the food industry. It provides both evidence and insight to ensure that consumer needs and expectations of a food product are fulfilled or even exceeded, which will lead to successful marketing and revenue growth. There are a lot of benefits to employing a sensory program in the food industry. Some benefits include: first, it ensures product quality. Sensory evaluation helps to assess critical aspects of food such as flavor, texture, aroma, and appearance, ensuring the final product meets quality standards. Next, it drives product innovation. Understanding how consumers perceive a product's sensory qualities allows for the development of new products that appeal to consumer preferences and expectations. Thirdly, it guides product development and marketing. Insights from sensory programs inform recipe development, recipe offerings, and marketing strategies, helping to identify potential gaps and promote successful products. And lastly, it increases consumer demand. By creating foods that are not only nutritious but also appealing to the senses, companies can enhance demand and differentiate their products in the market. Consumers determine the quality of food through the use of the 5 human senses. They are vision, smell, touch, taste, and hear. There are 2 main categories of sensory food tests: objective and subjective. Objective tests are performed to obtain quantifiable data of the raw materials and finished products. They are carried out by qualified and trained assessors or panelists. Subjective tests are used to provide particular data on the consumer's acceptability of food or their preferences, and the degree of liking or disliking. These tests are sometimes referred to as affective or consumer tests. Unlike objective tests, subjective tests are carried out by untrained assessors. There are 2 classes of objective tests: discrimination and descriptive tests. Discrimination tests, also referred to as difference tests, are those sensory tests that are used to ascertain whether there is a discernible difference between 2 or more food products. In order to distinguish between different products, the test makes use of a group of assessors or panelists who have received adequate training relevant to the test's complexity. The most common test types include paired comparison, triangle, and duo-trio. A paired comparison test asks panelists to choose between 2 samples to identify which has the highest perceived intensity of a certain attribute or group of attributes. For example, which sample is sweeter or saltier? A triangle test offers assessors 3 samples, among which 2 are alike and 1 is different. It tests the ability to differentiate flavor differences. This test is often used in training and certifying panelists to evaluate their suitability. An example is providing 3 samples and asking the panelists to identify which one is different. A duo-trio test asks assessors to determine which of 2 samples is the same as or different from a reference sample. For example, the assessor will be asked to choose the sample that better matches the reference sample, sometimes referred to as a gold standard. Descriptive sensory tests are used to identify the nature and/or magnitude of a sensory difference. Another way to say this is, it is a technique for qualitatively and/or quantitatively measuring the sensory characteristics of products. Qualitative and quantitative descriptive sensory tests require trained panelists to ensure the reproducibility of the sensory results. After properly training the panelists, they develop qualitative attributes and provide quantitative data about the intensity of such attributes. However, the extent of the required panelists' training before the test depends on the type of test being conducted. In subjective tests, attitudes like food product acceptability and/or preference are measured. In affective assessments, participants must choose, rank, or score samples to demonstrate their preference or identify the product's level of acceptability. These tests are often used, with examples including the paired preference and the 9-point hedonic scale. Consumers are often the respondents chosen based on past or present product consumption. The test procedure must be simple and uncomplicated so that the panel of consumers may comprehend how to answer to ensure the information collected is valid. There are two main classes of subjective sensory tests, preference and hedonic scales. Paired preference testing is a type of consumer test in which participants choose their favorite product from a set of options, typically a pair. These tests should be conducted using a panel of consumers who have used the product. Training for panelists is not required, and the ideal number of panelists would be greater than 30. In ranking tests, a type of paired preference test, consumers are asked to rank a variety of products in either descending or ascending order of preference or liking in these tests. The approach is typically a forced option because the participants are typically not allowed to have ties in the ranking. The number of samples in this test can be 3 or more. Hedonic tests use a scale to assess one or more products' degree of acceptance. This scale has an odd number of categories, usually 5 to 9, ranging from extremely disliked to like extremely. There is also a middle position that is neither liked nor disliked. Based on their reaction, customers rank the product on the scale. Some common forms of this test are a 9-point hedonic scale, a line scale, and a children's smiley face rating scale. The key components of a sensory program include sensory panelists, who are a group of trained individuals, sometimes also consumers, who evaluate products based on trained criteria. Panel selection and training, where the program lead looks for motivated individuals with strong verbal skills, good health, punctuality, and the ability to concentrate, using screening tests like the triangle test to assess their discrimination abilities. And the testing environment, which must be a standardized, odor-neutral, clean, quiet environment with consistent lighting and temperature to aid in obtaining accurate results. As mentioned, objective testing panelists must be trained. The training should include defining terms, practicing attribute recognition with reference standards and calibration sessions, understanding product-specific nuances, and adhering to strict testing protocols to ensure objective, repeatable, and scientifically valuable data. The first phase is the selection and pre-training screening, as not everyone has the abilities to meet the requirements to be a panelist. This process will include assessing candidates' sensory acuity, where potential panelists undergo screening to assess their sensitivity to basic tastes, their ability to discriminate between different intensities of sensations, and their vocabulary for describing sensory perceptions. Suitability evaluates potential the panelists' sensory acuity, motivation, ability to concentrate, verbal skills, and availability. And practice tests, like the triangle test to detect an ingredient or the ranking test to assess intensity discrimination, are conducted to assess the candidate's sensory abilities. The key requirements for panelists include good health. Panelists should be in good health to ensure accurate sensory perception. No sensory impairments. Screening tests are used to rule out taste or odor blindness. And dietary compliance. Panelists must adhere to rules like avoiding food, drink, or smoking for a set period before testing to prevent bias. There are several training methods that can be used. They include consensus training, has panelists discuss and agree on the definitions and intensities of sensory attributes. Attribute training, where panelists learn from an expert or trainer to recognize specific attributes using reference standards and samples containing all flavors. Familiarization sessions include tasting and rating various products to become familiar with the sensory profiles. Calibration sessions ask panelists to compare their ratings with those of other panelists or a benchmark to align their performance. and practice sessions, where panelists practice performing specific difference tests to refine their tasting method, such as rinsing the mouth and taking small bites. Depending on the sensory program, different panel types, and therefore, different training focuses will be used. Panelists for discriminative panels are trained to use correct tasting methods and follow procedures to identify differences between samples. Descriptive panel panelists learn a standardized scoring system and a common sensory language to quantify attributes. And for effective panels, panelists are trained to use clear rating scales for liking or preference. A food manufacturing sensory program's testing environment is designed to minimize external influences and ensure accurate, unbiased sensory evaluation of food products. Key elements of this environment include sensory booths or designated spaces. Individual, isolated booths or partitioned areas are typically used to prevent panelists from influencing each other and to minimize distractions. These spaces are often designed with neutral colors and minimal visual stimuli. Controlled lighting. Standardized lighting, often including both incandescent and fluorescent options with dimmer switches, is used to control visual cues. Colored lighting, for example red, green, or blue, may be employed to mask color differences during discrimination tests. Temperature and humidity control. The environment is maintained within a comfortable range for panelists to prevent discomfort from affecting sensory perception. For example, 68 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit with 50 to 60% humidity. Odor and noise control. The testing area is kept free from external aromas and excessive noise from production areas, cafeterias, or other sources that could interfere with olfactory and auditory evaluation. Neutral utensils and servingware. White or colorless plates, cups, and utensils are used to avoid introducing visual biases related to color or material. Sample preparation and presentation. Samples are prepared consistently, often with randomized codes and serving orders to prevent bias. Data collection tools. Appropriate tools for data collection are provided, such as paper forms, tablets, or computer systems, along with necessary writing instruments. And hygiene and sanitation. Strict hygiene protocols are followed, including regular cleaning and sanitization of surfaces with non-aromatic cleaners to ensure a safe and clean testing environment. In the food industry, sensory programs are vital for suppliers and manufacturers. We hope you found this sensory program training valuable. Please click the subscribe button to access additional Food Sure training videos and receive notifications when new training videos are posted.